She immediately screamed, "It's so painful, doctor. What is going on?" The doctor stopped and examined her. His expression grew serious. "This pregnancy is different from other pregnancies I have come across. It's too risky to continue," he said. "What do you mean?" "You can't stop now," Roslyn pleaded. "I'm sorry, but I can't continue. You need to carry this pregnancy till you give birth to the baby," the doctor insisted. Roslyn burst into tears. "No, I can't have this baby. My parents will kill me," she sobbed. Roslyn was a very beautiful girl. She was tall, fair, and her beauty made everyone in the neighborhood talk about how bright her future would be. Her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ocone, were very strict. Mr. Ocone always demanded respect, while Mrs. Ocone was a no-nonsense woman. "Don't let me hear that you are following bad friends, Roslyn," her mother always warned her. Roslyn was in SS3 and preparing for her WAEC exams. She was one of the best students in her school. Teachers always used her as an example during assembly. "Be like Roslyn. She doesn't follow bad friends," the principal would say. "She is bright, has excellent grades, and always wins competitions for their school." Elahor and Divine were not the kind of friends parents would want for their child. They were always looking for shortcuts in life. One day, during break time, Elahor walked up to Roslyn and said, "Babe, you day waste yourself. With this your fine body, not only school you one day do? Let me introduce you to a better way of life." "Better life? What are you talking about?" Roslyn asked, looking confused. Divine laughed. "She means there's money to be made, and you can make plenty of it if you know what you're doing. You just need to meet some big men. It's just small hookup. It's not like a relationship or anything serious." At first, Roslyn refused. She remembered her mother's warning. Bad friends will carry you to where you don't know. But Elahor and Divine didn't give up. They showed her the expensive wigs, clothes, and phones they had bought, and Roslyn started thinking about her own simple lifestyle. "Babe, nobody will know," Elahor assured her. "You can still go to school and read your books. We can manage it just fine. It's just a little time in a hotel, and your bank account will be full." After much pressure, Roslyn finally agreed. One day, during school hours, she left with Elahor and Divine. They changed out of their school uniforms into a tight jeans and crop tops. Roslyn felt uneasy. Her heart was beating fast, and she wasn't sure if it was out of fear or excitement. In her mind, she kept asking herself, "What am I doing? It's just this once. I won't do it again." When they entered the hotel, they met a man who was already waiting for them. Elahor and Divine greeted him like they knew him well. The man looked at Roslyn and smiled. "Ah, fine girl. You are beautiful," he said as he handed her a bundle of cash. That day changed Roslyn's life. What she thought would be a one-time thing became a routine. She began sneaking out during school hours to follow Elahor and Divine to hotels. At home, she lied to her parents that she was at school. She thought everything was under control, but she didn't know trouble was waiting for her ahead. Roslyn thought she had everything under control. Her new lifestyle brought money, and she could now afford the expensive things she once envied on Elahor and Divine. She bought new clothes, shoes, and even a smartphone. At school, everyone noticed her sudden change. "Roslyn, you're glowing these days," one of her classmates said during lunch. "No god, oh," Roslyn replied with a fake smile, brushing off the comment. But the truth was, her secret life was getting more complicated. Elahor and Divine were always introducing her to new men, and they encouraged her to keep going. "You see as life sweet now? No more suffering," Divine would say with a laugh. At home, Roslyn's parents began to notice changes in her behavior. She was no longer as cheerful as before, and she avoided spending time with them. "Roslyn, why are you always in your room these days?" her mother asked one evening. "Mummy, it's school stress. We're preparing for WAEC," Roslyn replied quickly, avoiding her mother's gaze. Her mother nodded but remained suspicious. "Okay, but make sure you're not overworking yourself. Despite her mother's concerns, Roslyn continued her secret outings. The thrill of her new lifestyle made her feel untouchable, but deep down, she was battling guilt. Every time she looked at her parents, she felt like a liar. One day, while sitting in a hotel room with Elahor and Divine, Roslyn decided to speak up. "Girls, don't you feel bad about this? I mean, what if our parents find out?" Elahor laughed. "Roslyn, relax. This is life. If you don't hustle, how will you enjoy?" Divine added, "As long as you keep your mouth shut, nobody will know. Just enjoy the moment." Roslyn nodded, but her heart was heavy. She wanted to stop, but the money and the lifestyle were too tempting to give up. One fateful day. It was a normal school day, and as usual, Roslyn, Elahor, and Divine left school early. They had an appointment with a man at a popular hotel. After spending a few hours there, they were on their way out when Roslyn suddenly felt dizzy. She held on to Elahor's arm. "Babe, are you okay?" Elahor asked. "I don't know. I just feel weak," Roslyn replied. Divine handed her a bottle of water. "Drink this. Maybe you're just hungry." Roslyn drank the water, but the dizziness didn't go away. She shrugged it off and decided to ignore it. However, over the next few days, the dizziness became more frequent, and she started feeling nauseous. One morning, while getting ready for school, Roslyn noticed she had missed her period. Her heart sank. "No, it can't be," she thought, panic setting in. She confided in Elahor and Divine after school. "Girls, I think I'm pregnant," she whispered, her voice trembling. Elahor's eyes widened. "Are you serious? How do you know?" "I missed my period, and I've been feeling strange," Roslyn replied. Divine sighed. "This is not good. We have to do something fast." Elahor nodded. "Don't worry. I know a doctor who can help us. He has handled cases like this for me before. Everything will be fine." Roslyn felt a bit relieved, but she couldn't shake off the fear. What if something goes wrong? What will my parents say? Roslyn's heart raced as she followed Elahor and Divine to the small, hidden clinic Elahor had recommended. The clinic was located in a run-down part of town, far from the prying eyes of anyone they knew. Roslyn hesitated at the entrance. "Are you sure about this place?" she asked nervously, her palms sweating. "Relax, babe. This doctor knows what he's doing. Just do as he says," Elahor assured her. Inside, the clinic smelled of antiseptic, but the environment was far from clean. The doctor, a middle-aged man with a stern face, asked Roslyn to sit down. "You're here for an abortion, right?" he asked bluntly. "Yes," Roslyn replied softly, unable to look him in the eye. "Okay. We'll handle it. It's a simple procedure. You'll be fine," the doctor said. He handed her a consent form. "Sign here." As Roslyn signed the paper with shaky hands, Elahor whispered, "Don't worry. I've done this before. It's quick." Elahor went first, and her procedure was completed without any complications. When it was Roslyn's turn, she felt her fear grow stronger. As the doctor began, Roslyn suddenly screamed in pain. "What's happening? This doesn't feel right," she cried. The doctor stopped and examined her. His expression grew serious. "This pregnancy is different. It's too risky to continue," he said. "What do you mean?" "You can't stop now," Roslyn pleaded. "I'm sorry, but I can't. You need to carry this pregnancy till you give birth to the baby," the doctor insisted. Roslyn burst into tears. "No, I can't have this baby. My parents will kill me," she sobbed. Elahor and Divine tried to console her. "Don't cry. We'll figure something out," Divine said, though her voice lacked confidence. Refusing to accept the doctor's decision, Roslyn became desperate. She avoided going home, wandering the streets aimlessly, her mind racing with thoughts of how to solve a problem. She couldn't eat or sleep. One day, she overheard some women in a marketplace talking about herbal medicines that could terminate pregnancies. Without thinking twice, she approached one of the women. "Auntie, I need that medicine you were talking about, Roslyn said, her voice trembling. The woman looked at her suspiciously. You know this thing is dangerous, ABI? I don't care. I just need it, Roslyn replied firmly. The woman handed her a small bottle of dark liquid. Drink it at night. But be careful. If you feel anything strange, go to the hospital immediately, the woman warned. That night, Roslyn drank the herbal medicine, ignoring the bitter taste and the burning sensation it left in her throat. She whispered to herself, "This has to work. I can't have this baby." The next morning, Roslyn left her house to clear her head. She felt weak, but she pushed through, hoping the medicine would do its job. As she walked along a lonely street, her vision blurred, and her legs gave way. She collapsed on the roadside. Mrs. Grace, the headmistress of a nearby school, was driving past when she noticed a young girl lying on the ground. She immediately stopped her car and rushed out. "Oh my God! Young lady, are you okay?" Mrs. Grace shouted, shaking Roslyn gently. Roslyn didn't respond. Her body was cold and lifeless. Mrs. Grace quickly carried her into the car and drove to the nearest hospital. At the hospital, the doctor examined Roslyn and said she took something harmful, likely an herbal medicine, to terminate her pregnancy. It's a miracle she's still alive. Mrs. Grace was shocked. This girl needs help. Please save her, she pleaded. The doctor nodded. We'll do our best, but she'll need time to recover. Roslyn slowly opened her eyes, feeling weak and confused. The bright lights of the hospital room made her squint. She turned her head and saw a woman sitting by her bedside. "Who are you?" Roslyn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm Mrs. Grace. I found you on the roadside and brought you here," the woman replied gently. Roslyn's heart sank as she remembered everything. "Did the pregnancy come out?" she asked desperately. The doctor walked in at that moment. "No, the pregnancy is still intact, and you're lucky to be alive. That herbal medicine almost killed you and your baby." Roslyn let out a frustrated cry. "Why? Why me? This isn't the first time I've done this. Why is it so hard now?" Mrs. Grace held her hand. "Calm down, my dear. Sometimes life doesn't go the way we plan, but that doesn't mean it's the end of the world." Roslyn shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You don't understand. My parents will kill me if they find out. I don't even know who got me pregnant. I can't do this." Mrs. Grace sighed, feeling sorry for the young girl. "Listen, I've been through a lot in life too. I lost my husband, and I've never been able to have children. But you know what? I didn't give up. You shouldn't either." Roslyn remained silent, her mind racing. She felt trapped and hopeless. After a few days in the hospital, Mrs. Grace made a decision. She approached Roslyn. "You can't go back to your parents like this. Not now. Come and stay with me. I'll take care of you until you figure out what to do." Roslyn was hesitant. "Why would you do that for me? You don't even know me." Mrs. Grace smiled. "Because I believe everyone deserves a second chance. And right now, you need someone to help you." With no other option, Roslyn agreed. Mrs. Grace took her home, giving her a small room in her modest house. She treated Roslyn like her own daughter, cooking for her, encouraging her, and even buying her maternity clothes. Roslyn slowly began to feel safe, but the shame of her situation still haunted her. She avoided going outside, afraid someone from her school or neighborhood might see her. As the months passed, Roslyn's belly grew. She often sat in her room, staring at the walls, talking to her unborn baby. "Why are you doing this to me?" she would whisper, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I'm too young for this. I didn't plan for you. I don't even know who your father is. What kind of life will you have?" But other times, when she felt the baby kick, her heart softened. "You're stubborn, aren't you?" she said one day, placing her hand on her stomach. "You won't let go no matter what I do." Mrs. Grace noticed these moments and encouraged Roslyn to see the baby as a blessing. This child could be the light you never expected, she said one evening. Roslyn scoffed. I doubt that. Finally, the day came when Roslyn went into labor. Mrs. Grace rushed her to the hospital, staying by her side through the painful hours. Roslyn screamed and cried, feeling like she couldn't do it. But after a long struggle, the cries of a baby filled the room. The doctor held up a tiny baby girl and handed her to Roslyn. Congratulations. You're a mother. Roslyn stared at the baby, unsure of what to feel. The child's small fingers wrapped around hers, and for a moment, she felt a strange warmth in her heart. Mrs. Grace, standing by the bed, smiled. She's beautiful. What will you name her? I don't know, Roslyn said softly. Mrs. Grace thought for a moment and said, How about Lillian? It means purity and innocence. Roslyn nodded. Lillian. That's a nice name. As the days passed, Roslyn spent most of her time in her room, lying on the bed, holding little Lillian. She was torn between love for her baby and guilt for everything that had led to this moment. Mrs. Grace continued to care for them both, making sure Roslyn had everything she needed. One evening, as Roslyn watched Lillian sleep peacefully in her arms, the weight of her decisions crushed her once again. What kind of mother am I? She whispered to herself. I should have done better. I shouldn't have gotten myself into this mess. Mrs. Grace came into the room and sat beside her. It's okay, Roslyn. You're doing the best you can, and that's all that matters. I can't even face my parents, Roslyn said, wiping away her tears. How could I ever tell them I had a baby? They'll be so disappointed in me. Mrs. Grace placed a hand on Roslyn's shoulder. You can't change the past, but you can change your future. This little girl needs you now, more than anyone. It's not about what you've done. It's about what you do now. Roslyn looked down at Lillian and nodded, trying to calm the storm in her heart. I'll try. For her, I'll try. As Lillian grew, so did Roslyn's sense of guilt. Every day, she watched the little girl grow stronger and more beautiful, but the shame continued to eat at her. She felt like she could never be the kind of mother Lillian deserved. One day, when Lillian was 6 months old, Roslyn felt overwhelmed. The weight of everything, the shame, the guilt, the pressure of being a mother, became too much. In the middle of the night, while Mrs. Grace was asleep, Roslyn made a decision. She packed a small bag for herself and left. She didn't say goodbye to Mrs. Grace. She didn't even leave a note. She just walked out, her heart racing in fear and uncertainty. She left Lillian, the little girl, behind. Roslyn returned home to her parents after months of being away. She lied to them, telling them that she had been kidnapped and managed to escape. Her parents were relieved to see her safe, but noticed that something was different. Roslyn seemed distant, avoiding their questions and acting strangely. But no matter how much her parents loved her, Roslyn could never shake the guilt inside her. The baby girl she had abandoned haunted her every day. She felt like she couldn't escape the pain of what she had done. Roslyn eventually finished university and married a man named Maurice, a kind and loving man who adored her. For a while, things seemed perfect. Roslyn tried to forget her past, tried to move on, but the memory of Lillian lingered like a shadow. Soon, Roslyn gave birth to 2 children, both healthy and full of life. But tragedy struck when both of her children fell ill, and no matter how hard the doctors tried, they couldn't save them. Roslyn's heart broke as she lost her precious babies, one after another. The pain was unbearable. Afterward, the doctors told her something she never expected to hear. She couldn't have any more children. Maurice stood by her side, but the weight of the loss took a toll on their marriage. He felt distant, and Roslyn knew that something was wrong. Months later, Maurice married another woman, a younger woman named Lillian. Roslyn felt the pain of losing her family, but she kept it to herself. She stayed in the background, trying to pretend that she was okay. One day, Mrs. Grace came for a visit. When she had her daughter Lillian put to birth, she brought her daughter Lillian something from the village. When Roslyn saw her, a deep sense of recognition washed over her. Lillian, the woman Maurice had married, looked exactly like the baby Roslyn had abandoned all those years ago. Mrs. Grace recognized Roslyn too. "Wait a minute," she said, looking back and forth between Lillian and Roslyn. "Are you Roslyn?" Mrs. Grace asked, looking surprised. "Yes, I am," Roslyn replied. "This world is a small place," Mrs. Grace said. "So you and Lillian are marrying the same husband?" "Oh," she shouted. The room fell silent as Roslyn's heart shattered. The child she had abandoned had grown into a woman, standing before her as her co-wife. Roslyn couldn't hold it in any longer. She broke down in tears, crying uncontrollably. Lillian stared at her, shocked and angry. "Why did you leave me? Why did you abandon me with Mrs. Grace?" Roslyn couldn't speak at first, but through her tears, she managed to whisper, "I didn't know how to be a mother. I was scared. I was young. I didn't think I could take care of you." Lillian's voice cracked as she spoke. "And now look at us. We're both married to the same man. You're the one who left me. And now you come back into my life after everything." Roslyn fell to her knees, pleading, "I am so sorry. I was wrong. I regret everything. Please forgive me." Mrs. Grace, seeing the pain in both women, spoke softly. "It's time to heal, Roslyn. It's time to make things right." The days that followed were filled with emotional conversations, painful confessions, and long silences. Lillian was angry, hurt, and confused, but over time, her heart softened. With Roslyn's constant apologies and tears, and after months of heartfelt pleas, Lillian finally forgave her. "I don't know if I'll ever forget, but I forgive you," she said one day, holding her mother's hands. Roslyn's heart pounding, but the pain of the years she had lost with her daughter would never go away. She realized that forgiveness wasn't just about saying sorry, it was about making things right. In the weeks that followed, Roslyn did everything she could to make things right. She spent time with Lillian, learning about her life, her dreams, and her struggles. It wasn't easy, as there was a lot of hurt and mistrust between them, but Roslyn was determined. She wanted to be the mother Lillian needed, even if it meant starting from scratch. "I know I can never get those lost years back," Roslyn said to Lillian one evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. "But I want to be here for you now. I want to help you in every way I can. I'm so sorry for what I did." Lillian was quiet for a while, then replied, "I don't know if I can ever truly forgive you. What you did to me, leaving me behind like that. It broke something inside me." Roslyn nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I understand. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it." Gradually, Lillian began to see the sincerity in Roslyn's actions. She watched as her mother worked hard to make amends, from helping her with everyday tasks to offering advice and support for her baby. It wasn't easy, and sometimes Lillian still felt angry, but the cracks in her heart slowly began to heal. One afternoon, Roslyn sat down with her parents. They had been suspiciously quiet since her return, and she knew she had to tell them the truth. "Mom, Dad," she began, her voice trembling, "I have something to tell you. It's about what happened to me all those years ago." Her parents exchanged a worried glance. "What do you mean, Roslyn?" her mother asked softly. "I got pregnant when I was in school," Roslyn confessed, her heart racing. "And I made a terrible choice. I thought I could get rid of the baby, but I almost lost my life trying. I was so afraid of what you'd say." Her father's face softened with concern. "Roslyn, why didn't you tell us? We would have helped you. We were your parents." Tears welled up in Roslyn's eyes. "I was ashamed. I didn't want to disappoint you. I didn't think you'd understand." Her mother reached out, pulling her into a warm embrace. "We've always loved you, Roslyn. Nothing you do will change that. You should have come to us. But we're here for you now, and we'll help you move forward." Roslyn cried, the release of years of hidden pain and regret washing over her. It was the first time in so long that she felt truly loved and supported. With her parents' forgiveness and Lillian's understanding, Roslyn finally felt like she could breathe again. She started to rebuild her life, focusing on her family and making up for lost time. She became more involved in Lillian's life, helping her with schoolwork, offering guidance, and just being there when Lillian needed someone to talk to. They still had a long way to go, but Roslyn was willing to do whatever it took to earn her daughter's trust. Though Roslyn's life was slowly coming together, there were still moments of deep regret. She would sometimes sit alone in her room, staring at a picture of Lillian from when she was a baby, wondering what kind of mother she could have been. Why did I leave her? Roslyn whispered to herself. Why did I think I couldn't be a good mother? But then she would remind herself that it was never too late to make a difference. She may not be able to change the past, but she had the power to shape the future. One afternoon, as she and Lillian sat together, Lillian turned to her and said, "I have forgiven you, Mum. I miss you so much. I never knew we would be united this way. How can the both of us end up marrying the same husband? But thank God I got the chance to meet once again." They both shared tears of joy. The next day, Roslyn packed up her belongings and she decided to leave the marriage for her daughter. She went to meet the husband, asked for forgiveness and told him to take good care of her daughter. So she left, returning back to her parents' house. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an exciting new story. Your support means a lot, and I look forward to sharing more captivating tales with you. See you in the next video.